loves. So, back in the van. Um, I wanted to take a few moments with you. So, in her mystery school, we've just entered month 5. And last month was the descent. This month is Dark Mother. And these are 2 months in which, in the descent, we really address and give sacred context to the annihilations of life. And when we move into Dark Mother, we're starting to go deeper into what is the presence in darkness, in the unknown, in loss that actually nurtures us there. Like, where do we find comfort and where do we find restoration? So, in this month, as we've been going through it, a lot of what has been coming up with the women in the school and with myself is this understanding that what we're doing together is we're taking the torture out of life. We are, obviously, we're not making it so that there's no more suffering, but we're taking the torture out of it so that suffering can be clean, hardships can be what they are, which is already enough, without adding all of this extra angst and torture. So I wanted to share, there are many things in these 2 months that kind of are working with that, but I wanted to share 3 of them with you because if you're in a great place, you're in a great place. When I'm in a great place, I'm in a great place. When I'm not, I'm not. And these are, when I'm in a great place, I really don't need much, right? But when I am kind of walking the hard, holy road, and sometimes it's long, these, we light candles for each other. We light torches for each other all the way along to get each other through. And I wanted to offer these 3 considerations to you about how can you take the torture out of the suffering of life, the hardships, the initiations. So the first one is to give hardship, actually give annihilation its place of sacred right regard, meaning so much of what creates torture and angst and the excess suffering on top of the annihilations of life, which can range from the severe to the not so severe, but they're annihilating, is that we don't really have sacred context for that. In the current, kind of overcultural model, if you're not succeeding, if you're not thriving, if you're not giving your gifts, if you're not all these things, or if something bad happens, all of a sudden everything's wrong. And so in addition to dealing with everything that you're dealing with, there's this feeling that something's wrong, something's gone wrong. And that's just not what's true. For whatever reason, annihilation, loss, the loss of innocence, the regaining of wholeness, all of this are part of the human journey. When we give annihilation sacred context, meaning we don't sugarcoat it and we don't act like it has some amazing purpose. It is what it is, and most of the time it's unfair, it's cruel, it's hard. It's a hard, holy road. However, we acknowledge that we were made for it, that there is something in life and in ourselves that will forge greater soul out of this experience, and that without needing to make sense of it, without needing to tidy it up, make it make it tidy, that we can actually at least give it sacred context and say, okay, where am I being forged here? And can I let this be what it really is, which is a time of annihilation, and stop resisting it? A lot of what happens that creates a lot more struggle, in addition to the annihilation itself, is that we don't want to realize or want to acknowledge that we are in the fallow phase of life, that we're not in fruition, that this is not a time to create. It's not a time to give our best gift. It's not a time to do all these things. It's not a time to hold other people. It's a time of annihilation. And if we allow ourselves to understand that that has equal regard with the full flowering of dynamic creativity, that the fallow, that these times are part of the wheel, then all of a sudden we are no longer kind of cast out and exiled from all else. We are in the part of the full cycle of things that is this, that is annihilation, and we can give way to it. There's, especially talking with women in the school, so much of what is just a relief is to be able to say, oh, okay, I see. I'm in a time of the fallow. I can stop fighting. I can stop trying to be something that I'm not. And I can also trust that this is one part of the cycle that will give rise to the other. So that's the first piece, is to give sacred context for annihilations rather than acting as though they have exiled us from the rightness of being. A second thought that I had when we move into Dark Mother is we learn about the sacred need to shelter, to incubate in the darkness, to really come in and find comfort there, comfort in the unknown, right? Soothing in the unknown, quietude, all these things. And in order to get there, we really have to learn, and this is number 2, is to learn to befriend weariness and follow it to the good. So that means getting really radically honest with yourself. You don't have to be in a full-on annihilation in order to befriend weariness. I mean, sometimes you're going to be weary to the bone of this life, just worn thin. And that can be a scary feeling because it's like you just don't have anything left to give or to move, right? When we can learn to befriend that and not just collapse into it, but actually follow it where it wants to go, then all of a sudden we can kind of rejoin the natural law of things, which is that weariness leads to the place of revitalization. It's all it wants. It's the only thing weariness wants. It doesn't want any of the other things. It's too weary of all things to want to fill in with anything, to want to give, to want to have exchanges, to want to create. I mean, it's like it just wants to be revitalized, and that will draw you close to something very pure and something very real. But you got to follow your weariness in order to get there. So I would say that one of the ways to take the torture out of life is to befriend weariness and not collapse into it, but surrender to it and follow where it leads. Understand that weariness doesn't just kind of bottom out into endless weariness. It might be weary for a while, right? Your reservoir might have gotten very low. But in that, if you let that be true, the intelligence in your being, in your spirit, in your heart are going to start drawing you towards the things that do actually fill the reservoir again, that will bring you back to life. But it requires a befriending of weariness and not such a villainizing of it. You might end up very weary and very uninterested in many things that you feel like you should be uninterested in, or you should have energy for, or that you did, and that has to be, you kind of have to bow to that, right? That can be a tricky one because we want to care. We do care. We want to care. We want to be a part of things. Weariness says, no, that's not what we're doing right now. We're done. And I don't care. I don't have the energy to care. I don't have the energy to show up for this. A lot of times what weariness will actually do is it will purify your relationships and purify your life, because if you start to befriend weariness, you'll stop kind of overriding it. Even when you're not in a particularly annihilating or exhausted time, you'll stop overriding your weariness, and you'll stop creating things based a little bit on nothing. You'll realize that you don't really care about that thing. You don't really care about this conversation. You don't really want to do this thing. You don't really have the energy for it. Befriending your weariness is the other side of the coin to befriending your true life energy, right? You befriend your weariness, allow it to exist, and then what you're also going to be allowing to exist is the truth of what you are actually here to do, what actually moves you, what your gift is actually to give, what relationships are actually yours to support. So befriend your weariness. Go ahead and be exhausted. Go ahead and be completely uninterested. And hold the question there of like, it's not that, it's not that, it's not that. Where is it then? Where are you? You know, there's prayer in all of this. There's the question and the prayer, because you don't get to figure these things out. When we're in the realm of descent and dark mother, we are in the unknown. And what that is going to bring is a much deeper relationship to that which is going to lead you step by step through life in a living way, in an intimate way, because you've been stripped of all the things that you thought you knew and the way that you thought you were going to navigate and all the things that you had planned out, right? So that would be my second. The first one was give hardship, give annihilation its place of sacred regard. Don't exile it. Recognize that there are countless ancestors, people now living who have walked through hardship, that it must have its place. We may not understand it and we may not like it. In fact, we probably shouldn't if we're being honest, but it must have its place, right? Learn to befriend weariness, and in that, learn what is actually alive for you, what actually does refill you. And then the third one I have is understand resurrection. So in the descent, we work with Inanna's, you know, kind of as the storyline, we work with Inanna's descent. And anyway, you may or may not know that, but it overlaps with the story of the crucifixion and many, many mythologies. This understanding of a descent followed by a resurrection, an annihilation followed by a resurrection. And if you can understand resurrection, and we have a whole week dedicated to this, I can't give you all of that, it'd be a lot, but what is there to understand about resurrection? And one thing to understand about it is that it's the seed of it exists in every annihilation. It's there. And especially when we're in the depths of it, all we can do is ask to be shown and maybe get a fragrance of it, you know? But we can nurture that. We can actually join, the same way that we join with the soul forging possibility of an annihilation, rather than just drifting in the horribleness of it, we can join with the resurrecting current that moves through every life annihilation. And, you know, to me, again, how to take the torture out of that process, the process of resurrection, is to understand that when life really annihilates you, which it will do often, in different ways, different scales, you'll come back to life after that, but it also won't be in your control. There's a way that when you heal, when you finally get to that place, or when you're finally resolved, or things finally kind of make sense again, you'll realize that you showed up for that, but it was also out of your control. There was as much as the annihilation was out of your control. You know, something happened, an initiation you never wanted, never would have chosen. It was out of your control. That's the nature of it, right? In a way, resurrection is the same. We do show up for it. We can nurture it and join with it, but we have to acknowledge, and what we're taught by kind of coming back to life after hardship is that there's something bigger than us that did that too, you know, and that we are never going to be the same after an annihilation, after hardship, that wasn't the point. The point wasn't just to kind of put you out on the other side, shinier, brighter version of who you were before. A lot of times where even resurrection, even coming back to life can be torturous, is that we don't realize that like we have this idea of what that would look like, that we'll get to this place where we're ourselves just more confident, we're ourselves just wiser, we're this but better. And what's true is that actually after hardship and all that it comes to move through our lives and our beings, will be in unfamiliar territory. You know, you'll be reconstituting, coming back together. It's like you get completely dissolved in the hardships of life. you know, to some extent or another. And then what will happen after that is a gradual reconstituting, starting to kind of come back together, but you won't, it will be unfamiliar. And so that can be torturous. You can feel like you're never out of the hardship, or you're never done with this thing, you're never over this relationship, you're never, whatever it is. But you're actually done with it long before you realize you're done, because you're looking for who you were before that, or for an ideal, some kind of idea that you have of what it looks like to be on the other side of it. And often on the other side of a hardship, what you are is deeper. You're carved out. You might be more sensitive, more sensitized, right? You're often more vulnerable in a certain way that's also more true, right? So there's taking some of the torture out of it is to just recognize that you can find that place and let yourself know, hey, it's over. I made it through. I made it through the divorce, I made it through the whatever it was. There are many things, right? I made it through. I still feel a little raw. I feel different. I feel sensitized. I don't know what's coming, right? But that may just be a part of your life now, because you've been made more human. You've been made more real. And so now on the other side of hardship, the torture can be looking for what has died, in a hardship, in an annihilating time of life, things inside of us die, and outside of us, that's just how it goes. And what that means is that we can't look to them anymore for our life. So this is what I would offer you, is just, in the school we have a whole 2 months really, but especially the month of the descent, really looking and being with the full sacred context around how to repair and take the torture out of what is already, what are already the deep hardships of life. So what I would offer you are these 3 things, simplified. See if you can give it its place of sacred regard. Just notice inside, because it does feel wrong. Annihilations will always feel wrong because they almost always include something that just isn't quite right. It can be an injustice, it can be something unfair, it can be a violation, it can be loss. It always feels not right. We have to find the deeper sacred context in order to move through the annihilations of life and to not be tortured by them. To find, what you'll find if you allow it to have sacred context is you'll find that it cracks open and meets some of the needs you did have deeply inside. A need for true intimacy with the one who made you, a need for to really pray, right? A need to actually have meaningful community and connection with others. There'll be things that come. You want to follow those things, right? Learning to befriend with weariness. Understanding that weariness always leads to kind of her opposite, because she's thirsty for that. Weariness wants to go to the good well. She wants to go to the clean water, to the good place, because that's all she's got the energy for. She wants to go to something that only gives, because she's too tired to give herself. And she's too tired to hold anything up. That's a really important place to know how to get to, and she's really the only one who can take you there, right? And then finally, to just consider that even in resurrection, even as you move through the intensity maybe of the hardship, or the particular windows of it, that you will be in unfamiliar terrain, and that it's going to be really hard for you if you're expecting it to be different. It's going to be a little torturous. What's going to help you is to name where you are. It's just like naming, oh, I'm annihilated right now. This is not, let me name that. This is not the time to be creating, to be launching my next whatever, whatever, this is where I'm at. Oh, okay. Oh, the relief. Let me just be with what's true here. It's the same on the other side. Oh, okay. I'm not annihilated anymore. Good. Okay, good. I can feel that. I can feel more ground under me. But I'm still really not sure who I am or what's true or what's, nothing's quite as familiar as I might like it to be. And that's because you're in the time, which can take a while, of reconstituting, right? And to realize that is to say, all right, I'm reconstituting. Can I feel that? Instead of looking to feel the confident, whatever or whoever, even whatever you were before the hardship, you're looking to feel what is reconstituting, what is your being doing, what are you becoming, or what have you become. In Queen's Command, we take it deeper and we really look at coming to peace with what have you become, right, as a result of your hardships. And often, in many ways, it might not be what you ever wanted to become. Maybe you didn't want to be more sensitized. Maybe you didn't want to be this vulnerable and this raw in the face of life and death. Maybe you didn't want to have to acknowledge how small you are in the greater scheme of things, and yet how powerful you actually are in the greater scheme of things. So when you start to allow that to make peace with what you've become, you can also take some of the torture out of it. And we want to take the torture out first, and then we will actually start to drop into the beauty. And eventually, as many people who have moved through these things tell us, we'll find that place where we can offer a certain kind of gratitude for what was given, even though so much was taken away. We can't rush that, that's for sure. But it's a promise, and many of our brothers and sisters have walked through hard holy roads to find that place. So I offer that to you, and I hope it serves in certain ways. And yeah, I hope it serves in certain ways. I won't assume that you're going through hardship. You maybe are not. But if you are, or if you are in any place in relationship to it, maybe this will help just, the idea is just to bring a little relief. When you're in hardship, when you're walking the hard, holy road, what you're looking for and what you can trust is comfort, relief, what soothes you, right? What's going to get you through, moment by moment by moment. I'm walking it with you. Love you.